Today is the day. That's what people are saying about the Delphi murder mystery. Today's the day that mystery may have been solved. On February 13th, 2017, Libby German and her friend Abby Williams went hiking. The two teenagers were good friends and had the day off from school. The weather was unseasonably warm. But when Libby and Abby did not show up when they were supposed to get picked up, their families began to worry. That worry turned to horror when the bodies of these two girls were found, both victims of murder. Then, over the course of the next 5+ years, there were no answers, no arrests, just a series of disjointed clues, like two sketches that looked nothing alike. A video of the suspected killer and a short audio recording of his voice. Then things got even stranger when police said they were looking for anyone connected to an Anthony Schatz social media account, which was not connected to the male model in the photos. Then the man behind that account was arrested for child pornography, but still no arrests for the double murder until now. Today is the day, and tonight we try to make sense of the arrest and prepare for what investigators will reveal Monday morning when they make their official announcement. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you for joining us. Wow. Today's the day. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. Nothing official yet, but everything is pointing in that direction. So let's take a moment and get some perspective on this. And let's begin with what happened here. This was an awful tragedy. But think about it this way, okay? How many times did you, as a teenager, even a young teenager, just go somewhere with your friends? Or how about your children? How many times did you know that, hey, my son, my daughter, his friend, her friend, their friends are going somewhere. They're going to the movies. They're going on a hike. They're going to the beach. And you can't be there 24/7 for your kids. They grow up. They grow up, and they have to grow up. And they should be able to grow up. All they were doing was going for a hike. In Delphi, Indiana. Small town. Should have been a nothing day, right? A day off from school, a day with your friend, and then it's over. But everything was over because we know what happened. Now, during the course of these 5+ years, we've seen so many different clues, but it seemed like we knew who the killer was. And it begins with the sketches. I mean, here he is. Here he is in the sketches. I mean, two sketches. They don't look alike, but my understanding is when you release a sketch, it's because it's based upon a description of someone who saw the person that you're looking for, and maybe different people can give different descriptions, etc. But we had a sketch. There he is. Well, we also had a video. Here he is again. This is the guy for 5 years. More than 5 years. We've had this evidence, and then we've had all the stories and the people that were under suspicion through the years. And now finally tonight, having confirmed the name, having confirmed exactly who it is, but all indications are the person who was purportedly arrested was under the radar, not someone we had necessarily been talking about. We'll see. We'll see. We're going to find out a lot more on Monday. But let's take a look at what we know tonight. This is from our affiliate WRTV out there in Indianapolis. The name of the arrestee has not been confirmed, but sources say the individual appeared in court Friday morning. The Indiana State Police plans to provide an update on Monday. And this is incredibly consistent with the way this entire case has been handled by investigators, holding all the information very close, releasing little bits and pieces here and there. And even now, when we've had an arrest, according to those sources, we still don't have the confirmation of the information. And there's perhaps a lot of reasons for that, and we'll find out. But we have some more information tonight. Rachel Wilkerson from WRTV in Indianapolis has more for us tonight.
Sources tell WRTV that a man has been arrested here in Carroll County. I'm told the sheriff will not be back into town until Monday. That's when the sheriff's office, Indiana State Police, and multiple agencies will be providing an update in the case that's grabbed international attention. The family tells WRTV it's hopeful. On social media, a sister said, quote, "Just know how grateful I am for all of you." She goes on to say no comments for now. The family will say more during Monday's press conference. Families of 13-year-old Abby Williams and 14-year-old Libby German haven't given up. On February 13th, 2017, the girls went for a walk in the woods near the Monon High Bridge. They were never seen alive again. On Valentine's Day of 2017, their bodies were found less than a mile from where they were dropped off the day before. What happened between the time they were dropped off and when their bodies were found has remained a mystery for years. We're hoping to get clarity about this on Monday. Indiana State Police, the lead agency on the case, says more than 50,000 tips have been called in or emailed during the past 5 years. Detectives have interviewed hundreds of people as well. This case has captivated the world. And those close to home say the girls haven't been forgotten.
We've never forgotten them. Everybody's going to keep them in their minds forever. The park will show that as it continues to grow. And we just hope when the case ends that, nobody will ever forget the two.
Indiana State Police say the case has never gone cold because investigators haven't given up. On Monday, the update will be at 10 a.m. and WRTV will be carrying this live for you at the Delphi United Methodist Church. Reporting in Delphi, I'm Rachel Wilkerson, WRTV.
This is such an important development, and obviously nothing brings back Abby and Libby. But for that family, think about where they are and where they've been in the last 5+ years. An unthinkable loss, but then no answers and no justice. Well, it appears that tonight there is an answer. Monday we'll find out a lot more about that. Then we get on the road to justice, which is, our system, the arraignment, the pretrial motions and hearings, and then a trial. And we'll see how it all unfolds. But right now, let's bring in our guests. Joining me tonight in Los Angeles, California, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon. In Charleston, South Carolina, host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Chris McDonough is with us. And from Indianapolis, Indiana, hosts of the Murder Sheet podcast, Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee. Thank you, everyone, for coming on tonight. Short notice, all this stuff. Wow, it just started unraveling this afternoon. Anya, Kevin, I want to start with you. You're there in Indiana. Your thoughts tonight. I want to get initial thoughts from everyone about where we are in light of these developments tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been on the ground in Delphi all day, basically trying to talk to as many people as possible to get a sense of what is going on. And I don't know if we've nailed down most of any of the important details yet, but I mean, we can say that this is a huge development. The fact that police are basically coming out and saying that an arrest related to Delphi has been made and answers, I mean, for us, that means that answers could be forthcoming, which is so important for the families, the people who love these girls, and the community that has been so negatively affected by this horrible thing happening. So we're hopeful that this is a good sign that somebody has possibly been arrested and may see, some sort of justice eventually.
Chris McDonough, your thoughts tonight, initial reaction to this news today. I mean, big news today.
Yeah, Vinny, I think this is fantastic for the family. And I think the investigators who've, just stuck to it till it's stuck to them, in order to get to the place where they've put some bracelets on somebody today, or at least, at this point, we have indications that they have a target, and he's appeared in court. It's going to be an interesting press conference come Monday for sure, and to see what they unfold.
Bobby Chacon, your initial thoughts tonight?
Well, I wasn't surprised. I mean, I knew these guys were still working it. They were doggedly going at this thing. Every couple of years we've had, press conferences or announcements on this case that clearly indicated they were still working at it. They were still doing search warrants. They were still turning every stone over they could in this case. So I was confident that they were still really going hard at this case, even though we weren't getting a lot of information. And Vinny, you and I have talked a lot about that. When I was an investigator on that side of the fence for 30 years, I didn't want a lot of my information out there in the press unless it benefited the investigation. And so I didn't mind that we weren't getting a whole lot of information, because in between those announcements, I knew that those investigators were going home with this case every night. They were living this thing. They were doggedly going at it. And eventually I was confident that they'd have some success.
I want to go back to another tweet from Kelsey German, Libby's sister. This is what she wrote today. Just know how grateful I am for all of you. No comments for now. Any questions, please refer to Carroll County Prosecutor's Office. There's tentatively a press conference Monday, 10 a.m. We will say more then. This was the line that really stuck with me. Today is the day. Today is the day. Nothing confirmed at this time. Anya and Kevin, Murder Sheet podcast. What did you learn today about the delay? I mean, we've covered a lot of cases. Many times when there's an arrest and there's an appearance in court, we kind of know everything at that point, and people are usually in the courtroom when all this happens. Any word as to why everything sort of unfolded under the radar?
Well, we do things a little bit differently in Indiana sometimes, and certainly things happen differently with this case. If you look back to the famous New Direction press conference we had back in 2019 in regards to this case, that press conference was announced on Friday, and it wasn't held until the following Monday. I think part of that is just to give, quite frankly, an opportunity for the national press to get to town to cover it, because this case really has attracted an unprecedented amount of interest all over the world.
And then in terms of today's, alleged court hearing, we heard some things that maybe there was some sort of hearing this morning, but when we went to the courthouse, they were a little less than cooperative about getting us that information, even though it is, as far as we understand, a public record. So we've had a hard time, and we know that other members of the Fourth Estate have had a hard time tracking that down. So we're kind of still looking and still trying to figure out what exactly is going on with that.
I mean, that's like standard operating procedure. Like the court records are public records. Someone gets arrested and charged, perhaps with murder, you kind of find out about it. Is there any, what are your thoughts, Chris, as to why so secretive, even at this point, if in fact they've made an arrest and someone appeared in the courtroom?
Yeah, Vinny, I think what's going on here, just like any high profile situation such as this, is, they're going to try to keep close to the vest. They're all the, like what we call pre-incident indicators, right? Any kind of forensics evidence that's going to connect them, maybe through, devices or anything like that. And then, they have to measure against, the victim risk continuum. The subject involved here for these two little girls was very comfortable with that area, as we know. I mean, you guys have been talking about this for quite some time. So if this guy has any geographical profiling connection to that region, i.e. close to it or close to where the contact site was, then they're going to keep that stuff very, very close. And with some of the other individuals that popped up, I'm not going to be surprised if there's going to be other information on the other side of the forensics aspect that's going to connect other individuals that connected to this guy.
Bobby, how about that moment where, as an investigator, you have an answer for a family? Give us an indication what that moment is like. First, when you figure it out that, yeah, we've got the answer, and then when you're able to let the family know about it.
Well, you're exactly right. There are two steps to the process. The first step is kind of a continuum. You think you have enough, the prosecutors don't. You try to get enough, you try to get enough. You get enough to where the prosecutors say, okay, we're comfortable moving forward. And then there's the decision on this part of the prosecution. Do we go by an information, a complaint, an indictment? And those are strategic decisions. Because you always want to say, when can we let the family know? When are you comfortable as a prosecutor that we can go? Because you never know when you let the family know where that information is going to go. They're not obligated to keep it a secret. So you have to, it's all very strategic. There's a lot of conversations. I'm sure this was talked about for days, if not weeks, about how to carry this out, how to charge him, what instrument we're going to use to charge him, why we're going to use that particular instrument. And it seems like the family, especially through Kelsey's social media presence, she's done a fantastic job at her moderation and her maturity in being present on social media for her sister. It seems like they've kept the family apprised of major steps in the investigation. The family hasn't had any complaints, so I think that they've kind of worked with the family. But as an investigator, it's always, you're almost to the mountaintop. The conviction, of course, is the mountaintop, but there's a major hurdle to get over when you can actually charge someone and you can tell the family, we're confident we're going to get a conviction. And that's a really good day. I mean, it's somewhat bittersweet because, it's never going to be occasion to celebrate because these two young people are gone forever, but it is what you're, it is what you strive for. That's the day. Like you said, today is the day. This is the day when you lock somebody up and you charge them with, whatever they've been charged with. That's the goal. And to let the family know, your relationship with the family over these years has been close, it seems. And it's a good day. It's a good day.
All right. Our guests are staying with us the whole hour. We're going to start going through some of the other people who have been looked at that have been part of this investigation, been part of the leads in this investigation, including that Anthony Schatz social media account and the man behind it, Kagan Klein. Like, could there be a connection between him and these developments? We'll talk about that. Plus, coming up next hour. In Santa Fe, New Mexico, the investigation into the shooting death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins by actor Alec Baldwin is over. All the evidence has now been turned over to the prosecutor, and now the question is, will Alec Baldwin be criminally charged?
We've known in the department since January that Alec would not be charged with a crime.
While investigating the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, detectives with the Carroll County Sheriff's Office and the Indiana State Police have uncovered an online profile named Anthony Schatz. This profile was being used from 2016 to 2017 on social media applications, including but not limited to Snapchat and Instagram. The fictitious Anthony Schatz profile used images of a known male model and portrayed himself as being extremely wealthy and owning numerous sports cars. The creator of the fictitious profile used this information while communicating with juvenile females to solicit nude images, obtain their address, and attempt to meet with them. Detectives are seeking information about the person who created the Anthony Schatz profile. Investigators would like any individual who communicated, met, or attempted to meet the Anthony Schatz profile to contact law enforcement.
This was one of the huge developments and twists in the Delphi case, in the search for Abby and Libby's murder. They said it was all connected to that investigation, this social media profile. The male model you see, completely innocent, had nothing to do with it. They just used his image to attract young girls. Now, eventually, though, they tracked down someone who they told us was responsible for all of this, Kagan Klein, who's then been charged. There he is, looks nothing like the male model, right? Charged with child porn crimes. And apparently, Libby German was communicating with Kagan Klein. And we're putting this all together. And we're like, are you kidding me? So everyone, of course, was looking at him. But then he wasn't arrested for the murder. But is he somehow connected? What's going on here? Let's bring back in our guest, Bobby Chacon, retired FBI, Chris McDonough, host of the Interview Room with Chris McDonough, Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee, host of the Murder Sheet podcast. All right, Anya, Kevin, tell me about Kagan Klein, the latest on him. I know we were speaking last week about it. Could there be any connection between what's happening today and what's been happening with him?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. We've been trying to look into, speaking with sources or tracking down possible connections between either Kagan Klein and the current person that's been arrested, or the current person that's been arrested with, any other figure that has arisen in the case in the past. So far, we've turned up a blank. So we're not hearing any connections, and we don't know if that means that there are none, or perhaps law enforcement is sort of being a bit reluctant to necessarily reveal that at this point.
But there was,
as far as we know.
But there was, the morning that they disappeared, was there any communication between the Anthony shots, which Kagan Klein is associated with, and Libby or Abby?
So from our understanding of the police transcript of the interview that occurred in August 2020 between Kagan and the police, they basically indicate that, yes, they were in communication on the day of the murders, that Libby's account and the Anthony Shots account were communicating. So that was sort of looked as a strong link between him and the crime. But this current person could have nothing to do with him. And, you always have to leave open the possibility that something could turn out to be a red herring, even if it seems very important at the time. So I think at this point, we're just trying to gather news and figure out, is there a connection? What are police thinking at this point? Yeah.
And, Bobby Chacon, I say this a lot, I don't believe in coincidences, right? But so, there's a couple possible scenarios, right? Kagan Klein is somehow connected to this individual or what happened, or not connected. If he's not connected, that means that Libby and Abby had some interaction with a guy who was trying to lure young girls into child pornography and pictures, and at the same time, on the same day, a crime of opportunity takes place? Or I'm wondering, what do you think here, Bobby? What are the odds?
Yeah, exactly. And this could be, as Anya said, this could be a red herring. And it is one of those times where, as an investigator, you just shake your head because you've kind of gone down this road and everything looks good. Sexual predator, has contact with the victims, and then if it turns out, I don't know, we don't know yet. But if it turns out there is no connection, you're right. It's one of those things where investigators shake their head and like, what are the odds? We just spent all this time and effort. They did search warrants in the river near Klein's home. They had search warrants and they interviewed him. Obviously, they spent, investigative resources looking at this guy hard. And if it turns out he had nothing to do with it and no connection to the actual person under arrest, then you just shake your head. It's just one of those really bad coincidences that drained investigative resources away from the case that didn't need to be. But that's one of those things where you have to go down every investigative avenue. You have to turn over every stone. These happen to look like good stones. These happen to look like really good investigative leads. And so it's yet to be determined, and we haven't found out yet, I'm sure we will very shortly, whether or not that has any connection to the person under arrest.
Yeah, and what's interesting, Chris, we look at Kagan and then we look at those sketches and they don't really look alike. I look at the guy walking and I don't know, Kagan looks a little bit larger than that guy, but I don't know, maybe gained weight over time, I'm not sure. But all of this is just, it's eye-opening, I think, for everyone, that we should never assume or presume or convict someone or point the finger too early, because strange things can happen like this.
Yeah, no, 100%, Vinny. I mean, remember the rule number one in any investigation, all behavior has a purpose. And so you want to measure off, what's the emotional and, the emotional age of somebody like a Klein. If he's into, child porn and a couple of the other, problems that he's into, does that correlate to the sophistication and the experience potentially of a subject like this who's walking on the bridge and may have been fantasizing, much more further along than Klein could ever get to. And then these poor little victims, present themselves as a perfect opportunity. So absolutely, I agree with Bobby 1,000%. You have to be very careful. And having spent 13 years in homicide, I can tell you how many of these nests I've gone into and said, we're just in the wrong spot.
So, Kevin, when we think about the potential that it is someone, it's not Kagan Klein, this is, the red herring, an awful coincidence. That area, like for a crime of opportunity in that area, how busy is it? How many people are walking around? And if someone was to just be walking around, would they necessarily bump into someone?
It's not a super busy area. It's not a super abandoned area. I think if you go there maybe over the course of a day, at that time, maybe you'd see a couple of dozen people. And I could imagine if someone is patient enough and just sit, there are benches nearby, if you could just sit on a bench and wait, you might have an opportunity for a crime of opportunity.
And I just want to get back to that search of the river that we were talking about. Did anything come of that search, Anya? Was anything recovered? Any evidence? Anything made public?
So as far as we heard from our sources, there was no blockbuster evidence, as far as we know, obtained. So I'm talking about like a murder weapon or something that would have some sort of dramatic impact on the case. Hearing it from our sources, we didn't necessarily get the sense that nothing was found, but certainly nothing that would end up having a huge impact on the case. So that was sort of how we left it with the water search, although obviously they were out there for weeks and weeks. So it was a pretty large, expensive, and ongoing venture for while it lasted. So it certainly indicated that there was enough confidence to have it, but whether it ultimately was helpful, it seems like, from what we understand, not necessarily.
All right, folks, don't go anywhere. The big breaking news tonight, it looks like there's a huge break, a huge development in the Delphi murder of Libby German and Abby Williams. We believe someone was arrested today. Someone was in court. All the details that they can reveal will be revealed on the Monday morning. In the meantime, when we come back, we'll take a look at someone else that everyone was talking about. And it was someone who was wearing an outfit very similar to the man on the bridge.
Call now.
Downhill. Guys. Downhill. Guys. Downhill.
That was a video from Libby German's cell phone released by law enforcement early on in this murder investigation. And for years, many speculated that the man in that video may have been Ronald Logan, the owner of the property where the girls' bodies were found. Law enforcement even looked into Logan writing in a probable cause warrant. Logan's physical build is consistent with that of the male suspect videoed by Libby German on the Monon High Bridge, but they also write his voice was not a match. But he did speak with a reporter from Indianapolis news station WTHR the day after the bodies were discovered, and he does have a similar appearance. Let's take a look back at some of what he said.
Who would have thought they'd let their children out to do something special that day, take a trip down, and then turn out with a disaster like this? The area that they were in is very hard to get to. I mean, you can't get there unless you walk there. I mean, so somebody would be walking with them or something.
Now, Ronald Logan has since passed away and was never publicly named as a suspect. Still with me, retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon, host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough, and host of the Murder Sheet podcast, Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee. All right, let's talk about Logan. Now, the thing about Logan, Kevin, didn't he lie about an alibi? Wasn't that part of the problem with, the bodies are found on his property? Kind of looks a little bit like the video, give or take, but then lied about his alibi?
Yeah, at the time of the murders, or roughly just after the murders, he was actually at a pet store in a nearby city where he had driven there himself. And as it turned out, he had some drunk driving convictions and other charges. He wasn't supposed to be behind the wheel of a car at all. And so he contacted a relative of his and asked his relative to say, well, no, he wasn't driving. He was with me and I was driving. So yes, he lied about the timing and he lied about who he was with.
Chris, it's unbelievable, right? It's another one of those turns in this case. Well, it's found on his property. Kind of looks like the guy in the video. He's lying about who he's with and everything. It's almost as if he was trying to frame himself for the murder.
Yeah, it certainly is interesting, Vinny, and that's why it's critical for any of the pre-incident indicators, like, because these two children were, they kind of put themselves into a little bit higher risk category, but it's going to be more important to study the individual that they have in custody to see if they had some kind of cross where their paths had crossed consistently, because where, you just don't show up on that bridge in the afternoon and, these two little girls are there. Now, it could be a coincidence, but my money's going to be on this individual is familiar with these two girls at some point in the investigation. The investigators are going to, pull that up.
I see it every week, Bobby, on Law and Order. Every week, a suspect or someone that's being looked at in a murder investigation lies about their alibi, but they're totally innocent. But they're totally innocent of the murder. That could be the case, very well could be the case with Ronald Logan. I mean, give us some sense of like the real world. Does that really happen in the real world? I know you're also a screenwriter, so
I don't write on that show, but I could. But yes, and it drives investigators crazy. I used to have to sit people down because when I did drugs and gang cases, those are oftentimes your witnesses are kind of shady people, and I would have to sit them down and say, look, I don't care about this other stuff over here. I need you to tell me the truth about this, and I felt like they always had a reason to lie, but it wasn't my reason. It wasn't the reason that related to my case. And that's what you have here with Logan, right? He's got some other arrests. He might be on parole or something, and he's worried about that stuff, and he did something wrong by driving his car when he shouldn't be driving. That stuff drives investigators crazy because he's lying for another reason, but it makes him look like he's guilty for this case. And so really, I used to just sometimes tell people and sometimes get approval from the prosecutors. They like, look, just be clear with me why you did this or why you were in a certain place, because oftentimes they have numerous reasons why they have to lie or want to lie, and it doesn't have to do with my case. And that may be what happened here with Logan. It makes him look good for this case, but really he has other reasons why he's lying. You have unless you do a background on the person, you have no idea why their motivations to lie to you are. And if you find out they're lying, you automatically assume it's because of your case. But you really have to do some digging and realize maybe they're lying for some other reason. And I think that's what happened in this case.
And it's unbelievable. If the person who's arrested today was completely like under the radar. I mean, this could be exactly like Law and Order. The first two suspects who looked so guilty and so connected, the twist could be completely not connected to the murder. Wow. All right. Guests are staying with us because I want to talk about what's going to happen Monday, what that's going to be like, what we can expect to learn, what questions we want answered on Monday. In the meantime, coming up next hour. In Los Angeles, California, former star of that 70s show, Danny Masterson, on trial, accused of raping 3 women, all former members of the Church of Scientology. We are live in LA with the biggest moments from inside and outside of the courtroom.
The biggest name to come from the witness list is Lisa Marie Presley. Now, she used to be affiliated with the Church of Scientology. In 2014, she publicly denounced the church.
Fate of the Parkland school shooter.
Life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Emotional victim impact statements.
You set a precedent for the next mass killing, and nothing happens to you. That's not okay.
I'm stunned. The grief is overwhelming.
17 beautiful lives were cut short, and the monster that killed them gets to live another day.
The Parkland School Massacre sentencing. Live coverage Tuesday morning at 9/8 Central on
The courage of Libby German to use her cell phone to record this man on the old Monon High Bridge is credited with giving police one of the best tips in the ongoing investigation. Libby and her good friend Abby Williams were on the historic trail on February 13, 2017, before they were found dead a day later. The video and sketch of the suspect have circulated around the world.
As the day comes, I just feel more hopeful that we'll get to an arrest and that in the end we'll get a conclusion, no matter how long that's going to take.
We also believe this person is from Delphi, currently or has previously lived here.
Moving video of the suspect on the Monon High Bridge was released. This video that Libby German secretly recorded when the suspect approached her and Abby on the bridge back on February the 13th, 2017. State police also shared a bit more of the audio from that video. In the past, we've heard the 3 words, down the hill. Now listen closely to the new release.
Down the hill, guys. Down the hill, guys. Down the hill.
Today's the day. That's the big news. We believe that someone has been arrested. Monday, though, is an even bigger day when we will learn some of the information. Still with me tonight, Bobby Chacon, Chris McDonough, and Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee from the Murder Sheet podcast, Chris from the interview room with Chris McDonough, and of course, Bobby Chacon, retired FBI special agent. Here's some questions I think that need to be answered, or hopefully will be answered on Monday when we have this press conference. Is the arrestee the person in the cell phone video? Is it the person in the sketches? Is that person connected to the Anthony Schatz social media account or Kagan Klein? Anya Kane, Kevin Greenlee, what questions will you have Monday?
I'm really interested in knowing whether or not police believe this person arrested today acted alone or if he had accomplices. I'm curious to know, does this arrest close the books on this, or should we expect more arrests to come? I'd be interested to know what evidence would be listed in a probable cause affidavit that led to this arrest. And I'm frankly also interested in what exactly will they be charging him with.
Let me ask you, Chris, what questions do you have tonight?
I love what I just heard there, but at the same time, how are we going to be able to support this family through phase 2? And, you know, if they've got their guy, which it looks like, according to them, they do, they put bracelets on him, we're going to have to, you know, gather around him. And how can we do that? How can we do that as a community and as a nation?
And I'll tell you this, Chris, you get ready for that trial, and
Yep.
It's, you know, someone off the radar, not connected to anyone else that has ever been looked at. I mean, that's where the defense is going to point the finger in that trial. I mean, to me, it's extremely obvious they're going to point the finger over there. Bobby Chacon, how much do you think we will actually learn on Monday? Because I mean, you would fit in with the Indiana State Police in the way you would never want to release information. I understand that. So what would you expect if, let's presume that the person they have arrested is the person they believe did it themselves, they're not investigating anyone else. How much information do you think we could get on Monday?
Well, that's going to be up to the United States Police, obviously, right? But let's get alluded to the probable cause affidavit for the arrest warrant. Now, you do not put everything you have in there. They are not going to, divulge every single thing they have. I understand that's frustrating to the public, but they put in just enough that they need to establish the probable cause for the arrest. Now, my first question is, what actually is the person charged with? Is it murder, murder one, murder two? Is it manslaughter? Is it an accessory? We don't know exactly what he's being charged with or how he's charged. I assume it's an information or complaint, not an indictment. I assume it's not a grand jury indictment, but it could be. So I want to know how he was charged and exactly what he's charged with, because if he hasn't actually charged with the murders himself, and that, your guest earlier said, is there anybody else involved? So first of all, you have to start with exactly what he's charged with and why. If he's actually charged with the murders, how, again, we're not going to know everything because they don't put everything from the investigative case file into that affidavit for arrest. The minimum amount they need necessary, because you want to still keep as much of the information guarded as you can as you move along in the process. Discovery will start soon, and then we will start getting leaks of this information out as the discovery process moves in. Discovery is where the prosecution turns over to defense all the evidence that it's most of the evidence that it's gathered during the investigation. And there will be, as you said, there will be the defense pointing to other Mr. Logan or Keegan Klein and all these other suspects. But that's very common in an investigation. We always start with a wide pool of suspects and we narrow as we go along. I don't think we will hear a lot about the physical evidence. I think that will be held back a little bit. Just because you don't want a lot of that stuff getting out. Because it's not necessary, and so I don't think you'll hear a lot about that. You may get some DNA evidence released. You may get some results of DNA from the crime scene and from the individual arrested. I don't know, but you certainly will not get the entire story yet. And the public just has to be patient as the process goes on, because the only thing that's important is that we get a conviction in this case.
Absolutely.
And that has to happen, with the process. We have to follow due process.
And by the way, I always forget to mention it, Bobby Chacon, also an attorney. So Anya and Kevin, I'll give you guys the final word here. The other thing that I wanted to understand is why now, right? Was something recently developed, and was it, even if they can't give us the specific evidence, was it forensic scientific type evidence, or was it testimonial type evidence? So I'll give you guys the last 30 seconds here to kind of wrap up where we are and how much you're looking forward to Monday.
Yeah, we're certainly looking forward to Monday. As journalists, all we can do is essentially document what the police are doing and what the investigation is doing. And we can say that in this case, we were told whatever happened, it was maybe a bit of a twist, even for people inside the investigation. So, I don't know if we can say what exactly happened, but it seems like it has caught nearly everyone by surprise somewhat.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for spending the hour with me. Murder Sheet is the podcast. Check it out, folks. The Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Incredible stories day in and day out. And Bobby Chacon does everything else. All right. Thanks so much, guys.